Thank you to the people who are supporting me on Ko-fi. You guys are keeping me alive. Brian was quietly snoring inside of the Roxy Raceway security office. He was on 3D printer duty for the day and had been ordered to print a huge batch of staff-bought parts. Thankfully, the job was just boring and only required him to press a button once per hour before taking out the finished piece, and then pressing the button again, letting the machine continue its work. But that was fine with the security guard. He was too lazy today to do anything anyways. With a smile on his face, he rubbed his back on the office chair he was sitting in to get more comfortable. Brian was glad to be here. It was cool and chill. Almost instinctively, he reached for his breast pocket to pull out a doobie, only to find an empty one. Lazily, he opened one eye. He could have sworn he had at least 3 still in there. With his half-open eye, he looked down at himself. Johnson read the nameplate. He was wearing the wrong uniform. Oops. Brian sighed. Johnson wasn't even at work today. Yeah, that's why he was still wearing it. Man sighed, and chose to close his open eye instead. Sure, whatever, he thought. His phone beeped, indicating he needed to press the button again, and as the security guard was taking out the freshly printed staff-bought head shell, the door to the office opened. In its frame stood the giant Dmitry Popov, another guard. The Russian ex-military had his hand on a small woman whose face was a bit dirty, not to mention hole-covered clothes. She was grabbing the hand of the living embodiment of the Terminator, trying to get loose. Brian sighed. Silly Whitman, Dmitry picked up dirty woman from lobby. Let go of me, you hushed. Brian looked at your struggling form up and down. So? Does she have a pass? Dmitry didn't check. Brian deadpanned and then looked at you. Do you have a pass? Your face turned into a grimace, and from a small pouch around your waist you pulled out an entrance ticket. See, she's fine, just let her be. But, Dmitry protested, Pizza Plex is not homeless shelter. Once again, Brian looked you up and down. You were cute, or well, cute enough, so that his male instincts made him care. Brian rolled his eyes. Well, are you homeless? You didn't respond. Ugh, God damn it, he thought. Now the procedure required him to put you into the lost and found cell and call the police. Okay, Dmitry, I'll handle it, okay? Duh. That's why Dmitry went to Silly Whitman. First with little wreck girl. The giant turned around and slammed the door behind him shut. Shivering, you stood there while Brian leaned back against the chair again. He likes you. He gave you a nickname. You gulped loudly. The man in front of you, the Silly Whitman, was tall, thin but not lanky. Had super long, straight black hair and green eyes. Like a douchebag, he was wearing his employee cap backwards, and his chin was unevenly shaved, making it look like the surface of a cactus. Even from your position, just in front of the door to the office, you could smell a heavy stench of sandalwood incense emitting from the man, alleviated by the desk fan blowing behind him. Probably to hide the smell of his preferred substance to abuse. The man bit his lower lip. Name's Brian. Don't look at the name tag, he said. He sounded bored and a little disinterested. You didn't respond, and he sighed. Please don't do the hunted animal shtick other homeless are doing. You're not some street dog. Besides, you don't scare me. I'm the guy with the taser, pepper spray, and a crowbar. Crowbar? That sounded a little extreme. Brian chuckled. Technically I should be using a baton, but that isn't threatening enough. Not like I ever need it anyways. The threat is enough, normally. He shrugged. What happens to me next? I shouldn't abuse my power. I shouldn't abuse my power. Well, depends on what you want to do. God damn it. Brian really needed to keep his goddamn mouth shut when he was around attractive women. He knew that, and every staff member at the Pizzaplex knew that. When Brian didn't have a girlfriend, he was practically flirting with anything that had a pair of breasts and a nice face. And currently he was between relationships. Truth be told, Brian just had mommy issues, and he felt incredibly helpless without a female figure in his life. Sadly though, thanks to his vices, Brian was more often than not also the reason many relationships didn't last long, as he was, quite simply, too much work. You tilted your head, instantly picking up on what he was implying. You had lived on the streets long enough to know key sentences like this were always the start of something lewd. Brian meanwhile blushed and looked away. Sorry, slip of the tongue. After a few minutes of awkward silence, he turned back to the desk fan, pulling out his phone. The familiar theme of Plants vs. Zombies beginning to play. Your eyes started left to right. Should you just leave? But as your hand reached for the door handle, I wouldn't do that if I were you, hushed Brian. He paused his game and turned around. If Terminator catches you, there's gonna be a bloodbath. Your hand immediately retreated. It's a figure of speech. You sighed, a little frustrated. Brian returned to playing his game. You, meanwhile, just sunk to the floor. The tiled ground was cool to the touch. It was great compared to the heat of the outside. While Brian's eyes were focused on his game, he began talking. So, how long did you beg to get that ticket? I don't know. So you were one of those who brought whatever they could afford. So sad. Wanna know why we have these harsh rules against you and, others in your situation? His little pause felt a little insulting. It's because they try to stay overnight more often than not. You know, secretly, like hiding in the maintenance tunnels and stuff. Our night guard staff is always a little on edge. Trust me, they taser any human silhouette. It's for both their safety and especially your safety if no one is present when the night guard takes over. They're very trigger happy. Right. Brian exhaled after a couple of moments. You know, there's a lot of stuff I want to ask you, and I'm sure a lot of people ask you these things, but, you know, I feel like stuff like that is better talked about over some food. He was flirting again, but slightly less crude. You appreciated that. While I'm legally required to not say this due to being on the clock at the Plex, I do know a different place. Amazing enchiladas. My treat. Doesn't matter, they're very affordable as well. You could probably pay for them as well. You could probably pay for them is what I mean. You wanted to react in a hostile manner as you felt a little patronized, but something inside you made you reconsider. On the street, you learned to accept any food. And if there's enchiladas were as good as promised, might as well indulge him. Maybe you could even sleep in an actual bed for once if you played your cards right. Though he would probably try to get on you. Then again, you looked Brian up and down. You wouldn't mind it, maybe. It was desperate. Nah, not too desperate, but definitely pathetic. Enough to make him want to protect you at least. Yeah, that's how you should act. Act desperate, but not pathetic. Okay. You had paid quite a lot of money for that ticket. So, there should be something in it for you. It was after Brian's shift when he snuck you outside. past the other guards, to his expensive sports car? What? Perplexed, you looked at the guard. There was no way the meager salary of a goddamn pizza place security guard could afford something like this. You suppressed a smile. You could profit from this tremendously if you played your cards right. The dude obviously found you attractive enough to not call the cops on you. If you managed to become his girlfriend, dealt with whatever shenanigans he would throw at you, well, you shouldn't become too greedy. But you would be saved off of the streets. Thank God he was so easy on the eyes as well. With an uncomfortable blush, you sat down in Brian's passenger seat. The car was super fancy on the inside too, looking like one of those video game cars you only got from super grindy achievements. "One sec," said Brian as he casually pressed a button. "Just turning off the seat heater." That was so going to be a setup for a corny line, you could tell. You waited for him to open his mouth before the two of you said in unison, "After all, a hot ass like yours doesn't need one." Brian was impressed. On paper it sounded a little shallow, but you saying that simultaneously with him? Yeah, he had just fallen in love with you. Or, well, it was more like an instant desire to rip the rags off your body and throw you on his bed. Of course, Brian first drove you to the restaurant. He was a little classy after all. It was a small, privately owned diner that sold Mexican food. The menu was inexpensive as well. You probably would only need to scouch a few dollars together to get a full hot meal. How did this place elude you for so long? It had been here the entire time. Of course, Brian got you the enchiladas as promised. And they were incredible. The cheese was melty, and the sauce was surprisingly sweet. "So, I'm curious," you said in between bites. "How can you afford that car?" He exhaled through his nose as he smiled. "Father's in charge of FNAF robotics. My mother is a supermodel currently in Paris." He said that like it was normal to have a father who was in charge of the largest robotics firm in the US, and a mother who might be one of the most desirable women on the planet when it came to looks. After all, she was in Paris. Interested, you leaned forward. "So you're one of those influenza-rich children kids?" "So are you one of those influenza kids?" Brian smirked. You had a pretty sharp tongue for a homeless woman. He liked that. Well, my rich pretty boy shenanigans had never gotten anyone killed, so I don't think I have influenza. You chuckled. I stay with weed. Never went over that either. It's too dangerous. And, see, my dear old dad didn't believe in big private schools. In hindsight, I could probably have been king of the playground, with the pocket money alone that I was making as a kid. But you also don't realize when you're this young the power that you really have with cash, until it's too late. By that I mean, I was being humbled. Kicked and beaten. Bullying is kinda shit. He shrugged. And I mean, I work as a night guard now. I don't need to. I just want to. Because I don't feel like a rich person. I'm just a person who happens to be rich. Get what I mean? Quietly, Brian added, and my dad would remove me from his will if I didn't work for him or Fazbear Entertainment in any capacity. Brian tilted his head and smirked. But I don't think you mind that, huh? You chuckled. Well, like any girl, I dreamed of having a rich husband. But even when I was imagining it, I felt as if I would never fit in. And then I'd be without a rich husband in no time. Brian smirked. Oh, so you wanna marry me already, huh? You blushed. That was a trick question. You knew it, he knew it. Not responding was the right choice here. Or at least, the option that pleased Brian the most. After the meal, you followed the man to his car, going straight to his apartment in a luxury high-rise building, parking it in its underground tenant park house. His apartment was on the 9th floor, and was a huge open loft. It was obvious, though, that Brian wasn't expecting any guests. Empty soda cans were scattered everywhere on the ground. Did this guy even drink water? The smell of weed and incense seemed to be having a battle for supremacy, and there was a huge collection of dirty plates in the kitchen aisle sink. In a way, it looked exactly like you expected. The entire apartment had only a single door, which led into what was the cleanest place in the entire apartment, Brian's bathroom. It was spotless. Understandably, his room tour was incredibly short, due to it being a loft. For now, though, he guided you into the shower, allowing you to shed your clothes, and then he left you alone. Up until now, you never washed yourself in someone else's house, and the homeless shelter didn't count. It took you a lot of self-control to not full-on bathe and take an hour-long bubble bath. Though, what you understood of Brian up until this point, he would probably have accepted it, and more than likely knocked on the bathroom's door and asked to join you. Wait, he would probably ask to join you. This would be working in your favor. When you realized that, you quickly put the plug into the tub, switching from shower to the faucet. Meanwhile, Brian was sitting on his sofa, drinking a Turkish soda he had ordered online a few days ago. It tasted like a mix of bubblegum and sour lemon. Pretty good. As he crushed the can against his forehead, he realized you had been showering for at least 10 minutes. Though he shouldn't judge you for long showers. He'd probably stand under it for over an hour if he had to spend months without one. But then he smirked. Confidently getting up off his sofa, he approached the bathroom door. And as expected, he heard the faucet. After hearing him knock, and his enthusiastic, "Need any help?" you sighed. And smirked. Got up out of the bathtub, the water cascading down your body. You didn't bother drying up too much, and you approached the bathroom door, opening it. Brian was already in his underwear, an expected outcome. "Yeah, Brian," you said, blushing, and he grinned. "Oh? What can I help you with?" "You see, I have this itch. It's really deep, and I feel like I shouldn't be the one trying to scratch it. But you gotta get really up in there. You have to really want it." He leaned forward, pushing his lips onto yours, before saying, "Can do, babe. Can do."